Welcome to the Tech Quarterback Show. I'm your host, Brent Chapman. This is the show that gives you a front row seat inside the huddle with the people driving innovation, building teams, and keeping your business moving forward. As I would say, your company's technology quarterback. Today, we're joined by a proven technology leader with more than 25 years of experience driving transformation across multiple industries, including energy and finance. He's been recognized among the top CIOs in Dallas, and he continues to help organizations innovate, modernize, and grow. Joining me to discuss that and more, Chief Information Officer, Joel. Welcome, Joel, to the show.
Okay, so if I used an alarm clock, I'd snip that out and place that there. That would be pretty good.
You take see, Joel, I don't practice that. So yeah. I just figure out how I'm going to say Joel Wolfe when I'm doing it. And so sometimes that was a long wolf. I should have done like a growl.
It's harder with just one syllable names, right? So
well, sometimes I'll do the high pitch to really add some, but this time I decided to try to go a little bit lower. We'll see how it sounds. It was a little carried out, but hey, Joel, thanks a lot for jumping on with us. First of all, before we dive into everything, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and your experience as a CIO.
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, I've been a senior technology leader in a CIO role for over 25 years, mostly in the oil and gas industry. And recently, my company was private equity held and did a transaction, and so I exited the company and decided to open my own company and not just help one company, but help as many as I can. So been doing that for a few months now. It's been exciting.
Joe, we've had other guests on where we've talked about that life cycle of how the CIO goes from, you're a CIO for whatever many years, and then maybe you go to another one, and then you have that moment where that break in your career where you do some consulting, you start your own thing, and it's awesome to hear that you're in that phase right now and enjoying it and loving it. Before we dive too much into kind of technology in our topic today, which will be around the energy industry a little bit, I have to start with your love of golf. We try to talk about sports here and kind of get into the sports background. So you're an avid golfer. I believe you're chairman of the Stonebriar Golf Club, which is quite a commitment, by the way.
Right.
How did you get into golf? Why do you love it so much? And how is that carried over into your skills as a leader and your business career?
Yeah, it's a funny story. I've told many people over my lifetime that I've had that same question. It's like, well, why'd you take up golf? I played baseball. I also shot ski at a pretty high level when I was a kid. But honestly, my best friend was a golfer, and we were literally sitting in school one day. I was a sophomore in high school, and he says, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." And I said, "Well, where are you going?" It's like 11 o'clock. He goes, "I'm going to the golf course." He goes, "We've got a tournament tomorrow." And I said, "Well, that sounds like fun.
How do I do that?"
So that's kind of how it all started.
So wait, you played baseball in high school as well?
I stopped when I got to high school, as everyone grew about 1.5 feet taller than I did.
Did you play golf in high school then?
I did, yeah.
That's
made
awesome.
the team in pretty short order, and we did well.
So you didn't take a long time, it sounds like, to kind of get up to speed as far as and then obviously, high school golf, I assume, isn't overly competitive, right? As it is in saying.
Yeah, it can be, but no, it was, it was pretty simple.
You were focused on the getting to leave at 11 a.m. to go golf. That was
Exactly.
the primary
Exactly.
objective. Hey man, whatever it is, but that has um turned into a passion of yours as you've
It
gotten
really
older.
has, and for those that play golf will know that it can be very addictive, and uh, it's. I always tell people it's an easy game to play. It's a very hard game to play well. So,
That is a well stated. It is not difficult to pick it up, the club.
right.
Pick up the club. It is very difficult to hit the ball anywhere where you would like it to go, especially.
But I will
That-
say that it's harder to hit an 85-mile-an-hour curveball than it is a golf ball. So,
this is true. Joel, when I was in college, I lived in an apartment complex with a pitcher that could throw 98. And
uh
when he was rehabbing he had the Tommy John or whatever. When he was rehabbing, he's like, do you want to see what it feels like? So I went out there when he was rehabbing and just stood there with a bat while he threw it. It was probably 94, 95. I didn't even see the ball. So I don't I don't
right.
I don't have any concept how anybody could ever hit anything moving that fast. I was afraid I was going to die if it hit me. So I
Right.
totally understand that. What about golf as a game do you think has attributed to helping you as a leader in your career, so on?
Well, certainly as I reach the upper echelons of my technology leadership role, there's a lot of opportunities. But up to that, preparing for that, I just think the game of golf it tells you a lot about a person and how they present themselves and how they act, and it's very structured. It takes a lot of commitment. So I think overall it's a great sport for folks to engage in, to do business and have fun at the same time. So
I was going to say, you bring up an interesting point, right? Like when we talk with athletes, right, we talk about like the dedication and the commitment to learn. Especially golf is very technical and very difficult to hit the ball well. But golf is interesting in respect in the business world because it's not just about the work ethic and the skill. It's also about, it's a networking tool in business. Joel, when I was very early in my career, I remember talking to one of the directors and saying, what more do I need to do to compete? He said, you need to learn how to golf and you need to come with the directors and VPs that go out and golf on Saturdays. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, okay, well, there we
Yep.
go.
Yep.
So I think
Exactly.
that's an important piece you bring up, is it's about the networking aspect of being able to play golf too, not just the skills you learn and how those apply. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely right. You and I have been involved in many groups, networking groups over the years, and it's just another avenue that actually ties it all together a little bit more cohesive, right? So when you're networking with peers and networking with partners, so I think it's an important aspect.
So yeah, completely agree. So you've been leading technology organizations for quite some time. How did you get started in technology, and what ultimately led you toward leadership in these VP CIO level roles?
Yeah, right out of college, when I got an opportunity at a bank, which is many mergers later is now part of J.P. Morgan, but uh, it was a unique situation. They had call centers that basically um, did credit card collections, and so there was a lot of technical aspects to it from a networking standpoint, predictive dialing systems and frontline applications and so forth and so on. So I was very fortunate to try. I got an opportunity to work there while I was still trying to play golf a little bit. Um, didn't really see it as a career path until back to our original story. I went and played golf with the general manager of the bank.
Interesting.
And we got to be friends. And an opportunity came up that was a more senior level role in the technology group. And he says, "I think you'd be great at it. Let's try it." So I did, but it really, I found out pretty quickly that I had an aptitude for it, from a troubleshooting standpoint,
Yeah.
from an innovation standpoint. And really I kind of took it from there and kind of started to transform at a very early stage in my career, which just kind of propelled me up the ladder. I always knew going in that I wasn't going to be a coder, but and I could do different things across the stack. Essentially, it became infrastructure, telecommunications. That was kind of the baseline for it. But I found out that I was very good at managing and developing people, and so yeah, that's kind of where it all started.
Which is actually an important skill that, I think that a lot of times, we look at the CIO, sort of where do they come from in an IT organization. I think it's like 80% come from, a discipline like being a developer, being an infrastructure engineer, right? And like 20% come from more the soft, the more functional stuff like project
Right.
management. And but I think, I mean, that was kind of my background, but I think that, to your point, those skills are very important. You have to have an interest and an understanding in technology. You have to be able to grasp it across the board, but you also have to really enjoy leadership and culture building and leading teams, managing people, to be successful. And that's why a lot of times the very technical CIO kind of struggles, when the technical guy kind of struggles when they get into that role,
That's right.
because it isn't really about technology at that point. It's more about how you manage teams and people and your peers, and you manage up. I do want to focus in on that a little bit about culture and continuous improvement. Your background, and you just talked about it, shows a consistent focus on culture, building teams centered on innovation, process improvement, and service delivery. What's your approach to building and sustaining a culture of continuous improvement within technology teams? And how have you been successful doing that?
Yeah. So, again, coming in as a non-technologist into a technology role, coming from basically coming out of school is studying mostly business. That was my curiosity, right? So as I looked at technology pieces, I said, well, how does this apply to revenue? How does this apply to um, customer retention, or whatever it may be? And those questions were, I think, unique at the time, and I think it's part of why I was successful. So at the end of the day, you have to have a deep understanding of your business and how the stakeholders are interacting and collaborating and achieving business outcomes. And so only then can you then go, okay, if I'm building a technology team, what are the core competencies, not just technical, but interpersonal? What are
That's
those skills that are going to be needed to effectively collaborate and innovate and be a trusted advisor and advocate, for your stakeholders? And it's not just for support, right? That's what I refer to as the blocking and tackling. You have to get the blocking and tackling done.
as a table
But if
stakes.
if you're not seen as a trusted advisor, you're not going to your ideas aren't going to go anywhere. People aren't going to collaborate with you and talk to you outside of, hey, I've got a ticket, I've got a problem. Um, so I focused, two organizations, really three. I would say three. Starting there at the bank is finding the right people and putting them in the right roles
Bingo.
so that they can add the most value. And it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, this is what I do or this is what I want to do. Let's talk about your strengths and how do we keep making them stronger. But really, what are the other components that are going to complement the rest of the team?
that's a very excellent point that I want to emphasize. Finding the right people and putting them in the right places for their skill set. I always say that is such a massive parallel to coaching, right?
Yeah,
Sports is finding people, and even within golf, right? Of different skill sets of being able to pitch or drive or putt, right? And being able to find people on your team and determine where they go. But you made another excellent point too, is that when you take over as a CIO, you really need to be focused on, you have to build credibility, and the
that's
business
right.
doesn't care if things don't work. So sometimes you come in and things work and it's just really immature, and your job is to mature and develop it and kind of create new value. Sometimes you come in and things are broken and you got to fix
Mhm.
everything first and then kind of build on top.
That's right.
But the underlying point that you make is you got to start with the table stakes, with the things, that the basic things, and get those working effectively to build credibility with your stakeholders, which are your peers.
That's right.
Joel, I want to move on and talk about technology and energy. But before that,
Mhm.
we do that, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds for a quick message from our sponsor, Qentelli. Welcome back. Thank you, Qentelli, for sponsoring the show. And for those of you just joining us, we're here with Joel Wolfe, CIO. And we are talking about his experience, and you can go back and listen to his experience in golf, and how he learned how to golf, and how that plays into how he leads teams today. And now we're diving into technology in the oil and gas, or as I refer it to as energy, but Joel will be more specific about oil and gas. To me, it's all energy.
Yeah.
uh, so, Joel, thanks again for being on the show. The industry is undergoing a massive digital shift. Everything from automation in operations to real-time data driving smarter decisions. Have you seen how have you seen technology transform the oil and gas energy sector, and what have been the biggest enablers of this change?
Sure. It's always an interesting conversation in that, from a digital transformation standpoint, it's a keyword that's been around for a little while. But the oil and gas industry, and really the energy industry as a whole, has been doing this for at least a couple of decades. Now, the difference being is that you had different levels of maturity. And so you would have your big majors that would invest a lot in automation and machine learning and things like that. But I think what's really changed over the last decade, hands down, it's the adoption and the maturity of cloud technologies. So it's allowed not just the majors, but all of your mid-market companies and small companies, to really engage and leverage infrastructure as a service and industry specific solutions at scale, really at a practical cost. And so I think cloud technologies has hands down been one of the biggest drivers. Now, that being said, you can't take advantage of any of that without reliable connectivity. So that's the other big thing that's really changed over the last 10 to 15 years in particular. The cost of bandwidth and the availability of bandwidth, the cost has come down dramatically. The bandwidth has increased exponentially. And so companies, particularly in the oil patch, are now connecting everywhere, anything and everywhere.
And I
And
think
so
has
that's
there
yeah,
been a big shift to IoT too in the, because I assume in the field you've got a lot of
yeah,
your IoT, your digital devices. Is that correct?
yeah, and that's always been there as well. So, but again, there's been rapid advancements in IoT technologies, and so the ability
When
for
you say
those
it's
to
always been there, what do you like? Give me an example. What are we talking? Do you have a slide rule out? What are we
yeah. So
Texas
since yeah,
Instruments calculator? What?
so sensors in the field have been there forever.
All right.
Now, whether they're connected, from an enterprise standpoint, is another story. But when you build SCADA systems out in the oil patch, they're very centralized, and so they may only be connected at a plant, for example, and nothing talks outside of the plant. So that was not only the architecture that initially would go in, but it's also from a security standpoint and a cybersecurity standpoint. But again, the technologies today and allowing companies to kind of converge that and take advantage of advanced IoT devices that can not only get the data but can also talk to other systems and integrate.
And I think that so you're talking about um, like with sensors and that type of stuff, obviously the technology is improved. So the data gets in faster, it gets
Mhm.
correlated faster, decisions can be
Mhm.
made quicker. You have access to real time analytics. I assume that becomes very valuable for people in the field when they're trying to make decisions on things. Is that all correct as well?
Absolutely, and it's all the way down the line to order to cash, so to speak. So, the faster that you can get your data and verify your data, right? The faster you can invoice, the faster you can
Yeah.
reconcile, so forth and so on. Yeah,
Well, the more the more organized you are, the ability that, and I don't know if they call them foremen or whoever the people out in the field that are leading can enter that in and be able to determine billing rates and all in time spent on these
yeah,
jobs and
exactly.
stuff. Yeah,
Well,
that makes a big, and I've seen on the consulting side, I've seen in some of these field-based services where that actually becomes a really big problem is because they're not actually, if their systems, they're not actually articulating the time spent and the jobs done. And so that impacts their billing, what they're doing to
absolutely.
the bottom line. So it's a very important part, especially in some more of the remote. And I imagine some of the oil stuff, oil and gas stuff is in some remote areas. Is connectivity a problem, or is that also improving with technologies like Starlink, et cetera?
Yeah, it's significantly improved. 15 years ago, it was a huge problem. So it had a domino effect, right? So when you're talking about transformation, you're like, well, I need to build an application, but it needs to have offline capabilities, right? Because there's no
Uh,
connectivity in the field. So I got to get back to an office to upload or what have you. It's much less of a problem today.
yeah. Whereas you can just with especially now, and it's still maturing, but the Starlink capabilities, right, with some of
Well,
these
and,
mobile
and just
carriers
the just the LTE networks in
are
itself,
better. Yeah.
right? And so are much
And there's
better.
more coverage in the more remote areas, I assume, too, right?
Right, right.
Um, you've been recognized for excellence in the office of the CIO. And part of that success is how you've leveraged data and emerging technologies. How do you see data and AI reshaping operations and decision making in the oil and gas industry and the energy industry as a broader?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the the convergence of traditional IT and operational technology (OT) has been going on for a long time, but it's really maturing to a point to where you're able to introduce more traditional IT solutions and processes into the OT environment, which really opens a lot of the doors to, how do you gather the information, how are you accessing it and processing it. Um, Again, the maturity of the IoT devices is also there, but getting real time data is kind of the norm today in the oil and gas field. So um, with the introduction now, and of course, machine learning's been around for a long time,
That's
and,
right.
and it's still used quite a lot. Um, automation at, for typical operational tasks is again becoming part of the norm. So it's kind of the expected. Um,
And
Now
it's
with
turning
AI,
that into actionable intelligence, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And so now when you start to look at the different AI tools, whether they're embedded or separate, and really your whole stack, your technology stack, where does that sit? Is it AI ready? Is it already AI enabled? Those are going to be big game changers. So, really, it's not just about automation anymore. Now we're making huge decisions, not just on um, forecasting, but predictive maintenance and what are the how are what's the best ways to go about the operations as a whole. Whether you're an E&P company drilling or you're a midstream company, there's certain things that are big ticket items from an OpEx standpoint, and AI is gonna really
You
transform a lot
touched
of
on
that.
something there. If you could expand on it a little bit, I think AI is obviously going to be a big efficiency play, but I think it could also be a safety multiplier. And you touched on that a little bit. How
Yeah.
how, how does it increase safety and make being out to the actual workforce safer and more compliant?
Well, again, the oil patches can be a very dangerous place,
Yeah,
right? And so, if you're connected to literally every piece of equipment in the field to be able to know how is it operating, what's the vibration, what's the temperature,
that's
what's the
incredible.
lifespan,
Yeah.
when was it last maintained, and so a lot of that historically is just manual human
Yeah.
effort. Right?
I
And
know,
so,
Joel. I watch Landman.
you're right.
I watch Landman. I am an expert in oil stuff.
Right.
Okay.
So if you can lower your risk and mitigate that risk by getting better data and decision making before what we refer to in the oil patch is windshield time, and those guys going out there and really going into dangerous situations. Now, is it going to solve everything? No, but it's definitely going to transform that.
Well, it sounds like it provides more information. It lets you know without relying on human awareness, right? Of maybe this thing has not been maintenance or it's hitting a certain threshold that you want to be careful about, right? Or that you might just miss. You just human
Yeah,
error.
yeah, no, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
as some
temperature and vibration again are two big factors
yeah, I
that
was gonna
that,
say.
that potentially can be
And that
catastrophic.
is, I mean, that's easy things for technology and AI to predict
Hmm.
and alert on. As someone who's led companies like Medallion Midstream and is now advising, like you mentioned, through your company Wolfe Global, you've seen the CIO role evolve over the years. What do you think the next generation of technology leadership looks like in the energy industry?
Well, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. I believe since I started my career that you have to have a business centric mindset.
Yeah,
It's more important today than ever, right? I go back and I've told people before, it's like I haven't done a technical interview in 25 years. It's all interpersonal, right?
that's so true.
I'm assuming that you've got the technical chops. That's why you're in here. But I need to know that you're going to be able to interact with the field guy, the mechanic in the field, and the CEO. So it's very important. So technology leaders, they're going to have that mindset.
That's right.
Uh, it's just critical.
I love that, Joel, because somebody once asked me, "Oh my gosh, you make it a CIO interview must be so difficult." And I'm like, actually, the interviews that I had for every other job were way more challenging because think about it. The guy interviewing the CIO knows nothing about technology generally, right? I mean, in most cases, it isn't that he doesn't know anything, but it's clearly not his. You're the head of technology at the company. So they're the CEO or the board or whatever. And I
Right.
always said, so no, those interviews were usually pretty fun because it was mostly about who you are, what's your methodology, what do you believe in, how would you attack these problems. It's more
That's right.
strategic in thinking. Those were never, it's not a technical interview by any means, right?
That's
And I
right.
laugh at you're saying that is that that's part of the transformation is you get, I always say the interviews get easier the higher you go.
Well, I tell you, and again, back to why I say it's more important today than ever, with you know the AI initiatives that are happening right now and the millions and millions of dollars that companies are spending with really no outcome at all. It really takes a leader that's going to be not only a subject matter expert, but can also talk to the business honestly and say, you know, yes, I think this might be a good thing to do, but absolutely not. I don't think this is a good use of our time or money or resources.
One last fun question before we wrap up. Obviously, you're the technology quarterback of your company, but you can't have a conversation with me without talking about football at least a little bit. So my
Right?
final question that I ask every guest is who is your favorite quarterback of all time, past or present?
Oh
Who do
boy.
you, yeah, there, I'm going to talk so it gives you a minute to think about it. Who's your favorite quarterback?
That's a great one. Of course, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan,
Oh,
so
gosh, here we go.
I would have to go Roger Staubach.
All right, there we go. That's a good one. My last guest that gave me a Dallas Cowboys gave this long wind up about it and then said Tony Romo.
Oh well.
I like, Tony's a great guy and I love Tony, but
Right.
Roger Staubach I think is an excellent choice. The thing that to me that was so great about Roger Staubach was do most probably the more current generation doesn't realize this. He served like did he play he left it did
He
he
played
leave
for
in the
Navy,
middle of his
right?
pro career or he left before he started his pro career and served?
Yeah, before I think.
So before he went to college, served, and then came back and played professional football and is one of the greatest ever. And by the way, has gone on to be a very successful businessman
And,
also in the
and
Dallas
one
area.
and one of the
He bought
nicest
he
guys
bought the
ever.
land by us, Joel, long before anyone even knew it was out here.
Right, right, exactly.
Well,
No, he's really a
Joel,
nice guy too. So
yeah. Oh, yeah. He's done some great things for the local community and was a great quarterback. And it's amazing when you can have a legacy. You can take what turned out to be a very short period of his life and take that legacy and use it to benefit people in your local community. And he's definitely done that. That's a good choice, even though I feel very sorry that you are a Cowboys fan. But you picked a great quarterback. Joel, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey from the fairways of Stonebriar to the front lines of energy innovation. Your perspective on leadership, transformation, and the future of technology in the oil and gas sector was awesome, and I think our listeners will appreciate it. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe, share your feedback, and join us next time. Until then, I'm Brent Chapman, and this has been the Tech Quarterback Show. Peace.